When my son told me they'd found a nice senior center where I could make friends my own age, I smiled and nodded. Later, when I saw the actual brochure, I discovered they were dumping me in a state-run facility while planning to sell my house, which I owned outright. They didn't know I'd already changed my will. By the end of the month, they discovered exactly what happens when you try to discard someone who built everything you have. You won't believe what I did next. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're listening in the comments. It's perfect for you, Dad. Look at all these activities. My daughter Emily slid the glossy brochure across my kitchen table, the one where I'd served Sunday dinners for 30 years. Her husband Pete nodded enthusiastically from across the table, not quite meeting my eyes. Bingo nights, movie screenings, card games, Pete added, pointing at the smiling seniors on the cover. And the best part is that you'll be with people your own age. I picked up the brochure, feeling the weight of high-quality paper between my fingers. Whispering Pines Senior Living. I read aloud, studying the images of elderly folks playing checkers and doing gentle yoga. My eyes drifted to the small print at the bottom. State-subsidized care, available. We've already put down a deposit, my son James announced, his arm around his wife Meredith. You move in next month. Next month. I set the brochure down carefully. That's awfully soon. Emily reached for my hand, her diamond bracelet catching the light. The bracelet I'd bought her for her 30th birthday. Back when I still had access to my full retirement savings. Before I'd helped James with his failed restaurant venture, and Pete with his ongoing gambling debts. Dad, we've been talking about this for a while, she said, though we certainly hadn't. You're all alone in this big house since Mom passed. It's too much for you to maintain. I manage just fine, I said quietly, looking around my immaculate kitchen. At 72, I still mowed my own lawn, fixed my own plumbing, and kept a garden that was the envy of the neighborhood. It's not just about maintenance, James said, his voice taking on that tone he used when explaining things to his children. It's about your safety. What if you fall? What if something happens and nobody's here to help? I have my medical alert button, I pointed out, tapping the device I wore around my neck, and neighbors who check on me daily. Dad, Meredith interjected, her professionally whitened teeth flashing in what was probably meant to be a sympathetic smile. Be reasonable. This place has 24-hour medical staff. You'll have 3 meals a day. And the social aspect, I have friends, I said. I play chess with Frank on Tuesdays. I volunteer at the library on Thursdays. Old man activities, Pete muttered, then looked embarrassed when Emily elbowed him. What Pete means, Emily recovered smoothly, is that at Whispering Pines, you'll have a whole community. People who understand what you're going through. And what am I going through, exactly? I asked, my voice still calm though my heart was beginning to pound. Something felt wrong about this entire conversation. Aging, James said bluntly. Dad, you're getting older. Your memory isn't what it used to be. My memory is fine, I said, feeling the first flickers of anger. When's the last time you forgot to pay your mortgage, James? Because I remember writing you a check for $4,300 3 months ago when the bank was threatening foreclosure. A flush crept up James's neck. That's not, we're not talking about me. What about the house? I asked, directing the question to all of them. What happens to my home while I'm at this facility? The silence that followed was answer enough. Emily and James exchanged glances. Well, Emily finally said, we thought we could sell it. Put the money toward your care. My care is already paid for, I reminded them. I have Medicare, supplemental insurance, and retirement savings. But the premium care at Whispering Pines isn't fully covered, Meredith jumped in. And there might be other expenses down the road. I nodded slowly, understanding dawning. This house, my home for 40 years, sat on 3 acres just outside of Nashville. Property values had skyrocketed. In the last decade, my modest ranch home was now worth nearly $850,000. And who gets the proceeds after my care is paid for? I asked, making air quotes around the word. Another uncomfortable silence. Dad, don't be like that, James said. We're trying to help you. I see, I said, standing up slowly. Well, thank you for your concern. I'll think about it. There's not much to think about, Pete said, his voice harder than the others. The deposit's not refundable. You move in on the 15th. I looked at my son-in-law, this man who'd lost $50,000 of my money at the blackjack table, who drove a BMW I'd helped finance. who lived in a house with my daughter that I'd provided the down payment for when they couldn't qualify for a decent loan. We'll see, I said simply. They left an hour later. After more circular arguments about my cognitive decline and the perfect community waiting for me, I stood on my front porch, watching their expensive cars pull out of my gravel driveway, the brochure still in my hand. Once they were gone, I went back inside and really looked at the brochure. The state-subsidized line bothered me. I'd never taken a handout in my life. I called the number listed and asked for information. Whispering Pines, Senior Living, how can I help you? A cheerful voice answered. I'm inquiring about your facility, I said. My name is Robert Miller. My children may have contacted you recently. Oh, Mr. Miller. Yes, your son James set everything up. You're all scheduled for our standard care package, moving in on the 15th. Could you tell me exactly what that entails? I asked. Of course, the standard package includes a shared room, 3 meals daily, basic medical supervision, and access to common areas and activities. A shared room, I repeated. With how many people? Just one roommate, she assured me. We find that companionship is important for our residents. And what are the visiting hours? I asked, though I already suspected the answer. Family can visit between 10 a.m. and 6 p.m., Monday through Saturday. Sundays are reserved for our community activities. I thanked her and hung up. A shared room. In my entire adult life, I'd only shared a room with my wife, Margaret, who'd been gone for 5 years now. The thought of being assigned a stranger as a roommate made my stomach turn. I sat at my kitchen table, the one where my children had just informed me they were essentially discarding me, and opened my laptop. I typed Whispering Pines Senior Living into the search bar and clicked on the results. The official website showed the same smiling seniors from the brochure, but when I scrolled down to reviews, the truth emerged. 2 stars out of 5. Comments about understaffing, poor food quality, medication errors. One review from a woman named Dorothy was particularly illuminating. They put my father here and sold his house. By the time I realized how bad conditions were, the money was gone and we couldn't move him somewhere better. Don't be fooled by the brochure. I leaned back in my chair, my suspicions confirmed. This wasn't about this was about my house, my assets, my money. I looked around my kitchen, at the home I'd built with my own hands, expanded when the kids were born, maintained through decades of Midwest winters and humid summers. The garden out back where Margaret had grown tomatoes and zucchini. The oak tree I'd planted when James was born, now towering over the backyard. They wanted to take this from me, to sell it out from under me and dump me in a shared room with a stranger, eating institutional food, waiting for death while they spent my money. I picked up my phone again, but this time I called my lawyer. Frank arrived at precisely 3 p.m. the next day, carrying his worn leather briefcase. I'd known Frank Ellis for 40 years. We'd started our careers together at Johnson Manufacturing, me on the factory floor and him in the legal department. When he'd opened his own practice, I was his first client. Tell me again, what's happening? Bob, he said, settling into my living room armchair. Your kids want to put you in a home. I showed him the brochure, explained the conversation from yesterday. Frank's expression darkened as I spoke. And they've already put down a non-refundable deposit, without discussing it with you first. I nodded. They seem to think they can just decide my future for me. Frank snorted. Last I checked, you're still mentally competent. They have no legal authority to force you anywhere. That's what I thought, I said, but there's more to it, Frank. This is about the house, your house, the one that's fully paid off, the one in your name only. That's the one. They want to sell it. Frank leaned back, thinking. Let me ask you something, Bob. How much money have you given your kids over the years? I pulled out a notebook where I'd been doing calculations all morning. For James, about $227,000. That includes his college education, the startup money for his restaurant, and various emergency loans over the years. For Emily, around $196,000. College, wedding, down payment on their house. And that time Pete lost his job and they couldn't make mortgage payments for 6 months. Frank whistled. That's over $400,000. $423,000, I confirmed, not counting birthday gifts, Christmas presents, and helping with the grandkids' expenses. And how much of that have they paid back? I gave him a look. We both knew the answer. None of it, I said. It was always, we'll pay you back when things turn around, or we'll take care of you when you're older. And now their idea of taking care of you is putting you in a state-subsidized facility and selling your house. Frank summarized. Tell me, Bob, What's this place worth now? Realtor friend of mine says around $850,000 in this market. 3 acres just outside Nashville is prime real estate these days. Frank nodded slowly. And who's the beneficiary of your will currently? James and Emily, split evenly. Do they know the contents of your will? They know they're my beneficiaries. They don't know the details. Frank took out a legal pad. Okay, Bob. I think I see what's happening here. Your kids have decided they don't want to wait for their inheritance. They want it now, while you're still alive. The words hurt to hear, even though I'd come to the same conclusion myself. What can I do? Well, first of all, you don't have to go anywhere. This is your house, your name on the deed. They can't force you to move. But if they think I'm losing my faculties, couldn't they try for guardianship or something? Frank looked up sharply. Is that something they've mentioned? Not directly, but James made comments about my cognitive decline, which is ridiculous. I manage my own finances, drive myself around, maintain this place on my own. Then we'll head that off at the pass, Frank said decisively. I'll set you up with Dr. Matthews for a cognitive assessment. She's thorough and objective. Once we have documentation that you're fully competent, they won't have a leg to stand on legally. And the will? I asked. Frank's eyes met mine. That's entirely up to you, Bob. If you want to make changes, now would be the time, before any potential challenges arise. I thought about James and Emily, the children I'd raised, the adults they'd become. I remembered teaching James to ride a bike, helping Emily with her science projects. Somewhere along the way, something had changed. Money had changed them, or maybe it had just revealed who they truly were. I want to make changes, I said firmly. Frank nodded, not looking surprised. I'll draw up the paperwork. In the meantime, don't sign anything your kids give you. Don't agree to any appointments or assessments they set up. And if they come with moving boxes, don't let them in. After Frank left, I sat in my living room as evening fell, looking at the family photos on the wall. Margaret smiling at our wedding, the kids in their high school graduation caps, family vacations to the Grand Canyon, to Disney World, to the beach. Happier times. The truth was, I'd been lonely since Margaret died. Sometimes the silence in the house was deafening, but I had my routines, my garden, my friends, my independence, my dignity. And I had something else. A lifetime of working hard, saving carefully, and planning for the future. A future my children now wanted to steal. I picked up my phone and called my bank. It was time to check exactly where my money was and who had access to it. The next morning, I drove to First Tennessee Bank, where I'd been a customer for over 40 years. Marjorie, the branch manager, greeted me with a warm smile. Mr. Miller, what brings you in today? Usually you just use the ATM. I need to review my accounts, Marjorie, all of them. Something in my tone must have alerted her. Of course, let's go to my office. Once seated, Marjorie pulled up my information on her computer. I see your checking and savings accounts, your CDs, and your safe deposit box. What specifically would you like to review? Have there been any unusual transactions lately? Any large withdrawals or changes to account access? Marjorie scrolled through the screens, her expression professional. Then she paused. There was an attempt to add someone to your accounts last week. It was flagged because it wasn't done in person. My heart skipped. Who? Your son? James Miller. The request came through online banking, but our system requires in-person verification for adding account holders, so it wasn't processed. I felt cold. Has James ever been added to any of my accounts? No, sir. The only authorized user was your late wife. And what about powers of attorney? Has anyone filed anything like that associated with my accounts? Marjorie typed something else. No, there's nothing like that on file. Relief washed over me, followed quickly by renewed anger. James had tried to gain access to my accounts without my knowledge or consent. I'd like to change all my passwords and PINs, I said, and I want to set up alerts for any transactions over $100. We can do that right now, Marjorie assured me. Is there something going on that we should be aware of? Mr. Miller. I hesitated, then decided honesty was best. My children are trying to move me into a senior living facility against my wishes. I believe they're also attempting to gain control of my assets. Marjorie's professional demeanor cracked slightly, showing genuine concern. I'm so sorry to hear that. Let's make sure your accounts are secure. For the next hour, we changed everything. New online banking credentials, new debit card PIN, new security questions. Marjorie even helped me download the bank's app on my smartphone, showing me how to monitor transactions in real time. One more thing, I said as we finished. I'd like to open a new account. One that no one knows about but me. We can set up a new savings account right now, she offered. Actually, I was thinking of moving substantial funds. What's your policy on wire transfers? By the time I left the bank, I had secured my existing accounts and initiated a transfer of $175,000 to a new account at a different bank, one my children had no knowledge of. It wasn't my entire savings, but it was enough to ensure my independence if things went south. My next stop was my safe deposit box. Inside were the documents that mattered most: my house deed, Margaret's jewelry, our marriage certificate, and the original copy of my will. I needed to make sure everything was still there. The bank officer led me to the vault and left me alone with my box. Everything appeared untouched. I took out the will, confirmed it was the original, and placed it in my briefcase to take to Frank. Then I added something new to the box. A sealed letter addressed to James and Emily, to be opened only in the event of my death. That afternoon, I visited Dr. Matthews, the specialist Frank had recommended. The cognitive assessment was thorough: memory tests, problem-solving exercises, questions about current events and my daily activities. "Mr. Miller," Dr. Matthews said when we finished, "I see absolutely no evidence of cognitive impairment. Your memory is excellent for a man of your age, frankly, excellent for a man of any age. You're managing your finances, maintaining your home, and staying socially engaged. These are all positive indicators. Can you put that in writing?" I asked. She smiled, understanding immediately. "I'll prepare a formal assessment letter. Would you like me to send a copy directly to your attorney as well?" "Please," I said. "As soon as possible." That evening, I sat at my kitchen table with a legal pad, making lists: my assets, my debts, none, my monthly income from Social Security and my pension, the expenses of maintaining my home. I was financially secure, had been for years. There was no economic reason to sell my house or move into a facility. Which brought me back to the real question: why were my children doing this? The answer was painful but clear. They wanted my money. They wanted my house. They wanted their inheritance now, not later. As I was finishing my calculations, my phone rang. Emily's name flashed on the screen. "Dad," she said when I answered, her voice artificially bright. "We're coming over tomorrow to help you start packing. James found some nice storage units where we can keep the furniture you want to save. The rest we thought we'd donate to the church." My grip tightened on the phone. "Emily, I'm not moving to Whispering Pines." "Dad, we've been through this. It's all arranged. The deposit is paid." "I don't care about your deposit. I'm not going." Her voice chilled. "This isn't really up for debate. We've made the decision that's best for you." "The decision that's best for me," I repeated. "Or best for you and James." "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means I know why you want me out of this house, Emily. And it has nothing to do with my well-being." "That's ridiculous," she snapped. "You're being paranoid. This is exactly why we're concerned about you living alone." "Tell me something," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Did you and James already talk to a realtor about selling my house?" The silence on the other end of the line was damning. "That's what I thought," I said. "Emily, listen carefully. I am not moving. This is my house. My name is on the deed. I am mentally competent and physically able to care for myself. If you and James try to force this issue, you will not like the consequences." "Are you threatening us?" she asked, incredulous. "I'm setting a boundary," I corrected her. "Something I should have done years ago." "We're just trying to help you," she protested, but her voice lacked conviction. "No, you're not. But this conversation is over. Don't come tomorrow. I won't let you in." I hung up before she could respond, my hand shaking slightly. In 40 years of parenting, I'd never spoken to my children that way. But they weren't acting like my children anymore. They were acting like predators, and I was their prey. My phone immediately rang again. I let it go to voicemail. Then it rang again. And again. I turned it off. Instead, I opened my laptop and began searching for estate lawyers who specialized in elder law. Frank was good, but I needed someone who dealt specifically with cases like mine, someone who understood what I was up against. Because this wasn't over, not by a long shot. 2 days later, I was in my garden when I heard car doors slam in my driveway. I straightened up from the tomato plants I was staking, wiping my hands on my jeans as James, Emily, Pete, and Meredith approached. They'd brought reinforcements this time. "Dad," James called, his voice falsely cheerful, "we brought some boxes to help you start packing." I noticed Pete carrying flattened moving boxes under his arm. Meredith held a roll of packing tape. Emily clutched her purse like a shield. "I told Emily not to come," I said. remaining by my tomato plants. And I'm not packing anything. Dad, be reasonable, James said, coming closer. The facility is expecting you in 2 weeks. We need to get started. I'm not going to any facility, I said clearly. I'm staying in my home. This is exactly what we're worried about, Meredith said to James, loud enough for me to hear. He's becoming combative. I'm not becoming anything, I said. I'm the same person I've always been. The person who helped you with the down payment on your house, Meredith. The person who paid for your wedding. The person who covered your bills when James's restaurant failed. James flushed. That's not fair. No. What's not fair is trying to push me into a state-run facility so you can sell my house and take my money. That's not what this is about. Emily protested. Isn't it? Then why did James try to add himself to my bank accounts last week without telling me? James went pale. How did you? The bank called me. I lied smoothly. They were concerned about potential elder abuse. Elder abuse? Pete scoffed. That's ridiculous. We're trying to help you. By selling my house out from under me. By picking out a roommate for me in a place with 2-star reviews and documented cases of neglect. Their shocked faces told me they hadn't expected me to research Whispering Pines. You don't understand. Emily began. No, I understand perfectly. I cut her off. You and James have spent your inheritance before I'm even dead. You've got plans for this property. For my money. And I'm inconveniently still alive and in the way. Dad, you're being ridiculous, James said, but his voice wavered. Am I? Then why did you list my house with Coldwell Banker 3 days ago? This was another shot in the dark, but James's stricken expression confirmed my suspicion. How did you know that? He whispered. I have friends in this town, James. Friends who look out for me. Friends who aren't trying to steal from me. We're not stealing, Emily cried. The money from the house would go toward your care. My care is already provided for, I said. I have savings, investments, insurance. I don't need to sell my home to pay for care I don't even need. You can't stay here forever. Pete said, his voice hard. You're getting older. Something will happen eventually. And when it does, I'll deal with it, I replied. But that day isn't today. We're just trying to be proactive, Meredith added. Planning ahead. Planning ahead. I repeated. Is that what you call it? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're trying to cash in on my death before I'm even gone. That's enough, James shouted, his face red. You've always been stubborn, Dad. But this is ridiculous. We're your children. We have your best interests at heart. My best interests? I laughed, a sound without humor. Let me tell you what's in my best interest, James. Staying in my home, managing my own money, making my own decisions, and apparently, protecting myself from my own children. You need help, Emily insisted. You can't see it, but you do. The only thing I need help with, I said quietly, is understanding when my children turned into the kind of people who would do this to their father. A heavy silence fell. For a moment, I thought I saw shame in Emily's eyes, but it was quickly replaced by determination. This isn't over, Dad, James said finally. You're making a mistake. No, I replied. The mistake was giving you everything you ever asked for and never teaching you the value of earning things yourself. The mistake was thinking you'd take care of me the way I took care of you. But that's my mistake to live with, not yours to profit from. So what now? Emily asked. We just leave and pretend this never happened. Now, I said, you get off my property, and you don't come back unless you're ready to apologize and treat me with the respect I deserve. Dad, James started. I've called my lawyer. I interrupted. Another bluff. He's on his way over. I suggest you be gone before he arrives. They exchanged glances, uncertainty clear on their faces. This isn't the end of this, James said as they started backing toward their cars. You're right about that, I agreed. But what happens next is my decision, not yours. I watched them drive away, my heart heavy despite my victory. When they were gone, I went inside and called Frank. They tried to move me out today, I told him, and James already listed my house with a realtor. Frank swore. Without your permission. That's illegal. He has no authority to sell your property. I know, but they're not going to stop. Frank, they've convinced themselves they're doing what's best for me, which makes them dangerous. The cognitive assessment results came in, Frank said. Dr. Matthews faxed them over this morning. You passed with flying colors, as expected. Good. Now I need you to do something else for me, something that will send a very clear message to my children. What do you have in mind? Frank asked. I told him my plan. When I finished, there was a long silence on the other end of the line. Are you sure about this, Bob? He finally asked. It's pretty drastic, I'm sure, I said firmly. They need to understand that actions have consequences. All right, Frank agreed. I'll draw up the paperwork right away. That night, I sat on my back porch, watching the fireflies emerge in the twilight. The garden Margaret had loved so much was in full bloom, the scent of roses heavy in the air. This was my home, my life, and I would fight with everything I had to protect it. Over the next week, I executed my plan methodically. With Frank's help. First, I filed a formal complaint with the real estate board about James listing my house without my consent. The listing was removed within 24 hours, and James received an official warning. I made sure the complaint was documented and kept a copy for my records. Next, I visited my bank again and formally revoked any and all automatic payments that went to James or Emily. Over the years, I'd set up several $300 monthly to help with Emily's daughter's dance lessons. $252 James for his son's baseball team fees. Small amounts that added up to thousands annually. These were now canceled. Then I changed my estate plan completely. With Frank's guidance, I created a revocable trust with specific conditions. My house and 50% of my liquid assets would go to the Nashville Veterans Outreach Center, a charity I'd supported for years. The remaining 50% would be divided between James and Emily, but with a crucial stipulation. They would only receive their inheritance if they had not attempted to place me in any care facility against my will in the 5 years preceding my death. Frank raised his eyebrows at this condition. That's quite the incentive for them to leave you alone. That's the idea, I said. I also set up a small trust for my grandchildren's education, to be administered by a professional trustee, not their parents. The kids shouldn't suffer for their parents' greed. With the legal aspects addressed, I turned to practical matters. I hired a home security company to install cameras at my front door, back door, and driveway. If James or Emily tried to enter my home without permission, I'd have evidence. I also arranged for a medical alert service that would contact both emergency services and Frank if activated. The pendant looked just like my current one, but offered far more protection. Finally, I reached out to my neighbors and close friends, explaining the situation truthfully but without unnecessary drama. My children think I should be in a home. I disagree. If you see them here when I haven't invited them, please check on me. The support was immediate and overwhelming. Sarah from next door brought me dinner and promised to keep an eye out. My buddy Frank, not the lawyer, my chess partner, offered to come stay with me if I ever felt unsafe. My weekly poker group, all retired like me, committed to a buddy system where someone would check on me daily. All these preparations took about 2 weeks. During that time, my children called repeatedly. I let most calls go to voicemail, listening to increasingly frustrated messages. Dad, we need to talk about this. Call me back. Dad, you're being unreasonable. We're just trying to help. Dad, the facility needs an answer. They won't hold your spot much longer. Eventually, I texted both of them. I am not moving. I am not selling my house. I am not discussing this further. The responses came quickly from Emily. You're making a huge mistake. We're trying to help you. From James. This isn't over. Dad, you need care whether you admit it or not. Their persistence was concerning, but I was prepared now. My home was secure. My finances were protected. My future was in my hands, not theirs. On a Wednesday morning, 3 weeks after their failed moving attempt, I was enjoying coffee on my front porch when an unfamiliar car pulled into my driveway. A woman in a crisp pantsuit emerged, carrying a briefcase. Mr. Miller, she called as she approached. I'm Diane Reynolds from Adult Protective Services. We received a report of potential Do you have a few minutes to talk? So that was their new angle. They couldn't force me out directly, so they'd reported me to authorities, hoping to have me declared incompetent. Of course, I said calmly. I've been expecting something like this. Please, come in. Ms. Reynolds looked surprised by my response as she followed me inside. Beautiful home, she commented, looking around at my well-maintained living room. You live here alone. Since my wife passed 5 years ago, I confirmed. Coffee? No, thank you, she said, taking out a notepad. Mr. Miller, I need to ask you some questions about how you're managing daily activities. Before we start, I said, I'd like to show you some documentation. I went to my desk and returned with a folder, which I handed to her. Inside was Dr. Matthews' cognitive assessment, a statement from my primary physician confirming my good health, bank statements showing my financial stability, and a letter from Frank explaining the situation with my children. Ms. Reynolds examined each document carefully. her expression changing from professional detachment to confusion, then understanding. "I see," she said finally. "Mr. Miller, it appears someone may have misrepresented your situation." "My children," I said simply. "They want my house and my money. When I refused to move into a facility they selected, they apparently decided to try another approach." She nodded slowly. "Unfortunately, we see this kind of thing more often than you'd think. Adult children who view their parents' assets as their inheritance, becoming impatient about receiving it." "Exactly," I said. "I've taken steps to protect myself, as you can see from those documents. But I'm concerned about what they might try next." Double quotes. Ms. Reynolds closed her notebook. "Based on what I'm seeing, there's no case for intervention here. You're clearly capable of independent living and making your own decisions. Will you put that in writing?" I asked. "I'll file my report today, confirming no evidence of self-neglect or incapacity. I can send you a copy if you'd like." "Please," I said. "And if possible, I'd like to know who made the report." She hesitated. "That's usually confidential, but ... double quotes." She paused, seeming to make a decision. "The report came from James and Emily Miller, listed as your son and daughter. They claimed you were refusing medical care, unable to maintain your home, and exhibiting paranoid behavior." I nodded, unsurprised, but still hurt. "Thank you for being honest." After Ms. Reynolds left, promising to send her report within the week, I sat at my kitchen table, thinking, this escalation was troubling. If James and Emily were willing to make false reports to authorities, what else might they try? I decided it was time for the final phase of my plan. I called Frank. "They reported me to Adult Protective Services," I told him. "Jesus," he muttered. "That's low. What happened?" "The caseworker just left. She saw through it immediately once I showed her our documentation." "Good, but this proves they're not backing down." "No," I agreed. "Which means it's time for the letter." "Are you sure? Once this is done, your relationship with them may never recover." I thought about James and Emily, the babies I'd held, the children I'd raised, the adults they'd become. I thought about the decades of love and sacrifice, all apparently meaningless now that money was on the line. There's nothing to recover, Frank. They made their choice. Now I'm making mine. "I'll send the letters by certified mail tomorrow," he promised. The next day, James and Emily would each receive a letter from Frank's office, officially informing them of my new estate plan. They would learn that their inheritance now depended entirely on respecting my wishes to remaining my home. They would discover that their inheritance was now conditional on respecting my autonomy. And they would understand that I was not a senile old man to be manipulated, but someone who knew exactly what was happening and had taken decisive action to protect himself. The certified letters arrived at their destinations the following day. I knew because both James and Emily called within an hour of each other, their messages escalating from disbelief to anger to desperate bargaining. "Dad, you've completely misunderstood everything," James insisted in his third voicemail. "Call me back immediately." "Daddy, please," Emily sobbed in her message. "We were only thinking about your safety. You can't do this to us." I didn't call them back. Instead, I sent a single text message to both. "I'll meet you at Frank's office tomorrow at 2 p.m. if you want to discuss this like adults." The next day, I arrived at Frank's downtown office 15 minutes early. He greeted me with a grim smile. "They're already here," he said quietly. "Both of them, no spouses." "Good," I replied. "This is between us anyway." Frank led me into his conference room, where James and Emily sat on opposite sides of the table. They both stood when I entered, their faces showing a mixture of anger, fear, and calculation. "Dad," Emily started immediately, "this is insane. You've completely overreacted." Frank raised his hand. "We're going to have a civilized conversation here. Mr. Miller has agreed to this meeting to discuss his decisions. I suggest you listen before speaking." I sat at the head of the table, Frank beside me. James and Emily reluctantly took their seats. "First," I said calmly, "let me clarify exactly what's happened. You decided, without consulting me, that I should be placed in a state-run facility with a roommate and limited visiting hours. You put down a non-refundable deposit without my knowledge. You listed my house with a realtor without my permission. And when I refused to cooperate, you reported me to Adult Protective Services with false claims about my mental and physical condition." "Dad, it wasn't like that," James began. "It was exactly like that." I cut him off. "I have documentation of everything. The listing agreement with your signature, James. The APS report with both your names on it. The brochure for a facility that has numerous complaints of neglect and understaffing. They exchanged glances, clearly not expecting me to have gathered so much evidence. We were worried about you, Emily said, her voice softer now. Living alone in that big house, what if something happened? That's my decision to make, I replied, not yours. I'm 72, not 102. I'm healthy, active, and fully capable of managing my own life. So you're punishing us for caring about you, James demanded, gesturing to the letter in front of him. Cutting us out of your will. I haven't cut you out, I corrected him. I've added conditions. You'll still receive half of my liquid assets, divided between you. If you respect my wishes, the house goes to charity either way, but the house is our inheritance. Emily protested. You always said, I said a lot of things when I thought you were decent people who respected me. I interrupted. Things change. This is about the money we borrowed, isn't it? James said, his tone accusatory. You've been keeping score all these years. No, James, this is about respect. This is about you seeing me as a resource to be used rather than a person to be valued. This is about you being willing to lock me away so you could cash in on my life's work. That's not fair, Emily said, tears forming. We love you, do you? I asked quietly, because from where I'm sitting, this doesn't look like love. It looks like greed. A heavy silence fell over the room. Frank cleared his throat. My client has made his position clear, he said professionally. The new estate plan is legally binding. If you contest it after his death, there are provisions that will direct all assets to charity. However, if you respect Mr. Miller's wishes to remain in his home for the duration of his life, you will still receive a significant inheritance. And if we don't agree? James asked, his jaw tight. This isn't a negotiation, I said firmly. I'm informing you of decisions I've already made. You don't have to agree, you just have to respect my right to make them. You can't just, Emily started. I can, and I have, I said. Now, you have a choice to make. You can accept that I'm going to live my life on my terms, in which case we might eventually rebuild some kind of relationship. Or you can continue trying to control me, in which case you'll lose both your father and your inheritance. James stood abruptly. This is ridiculous. You've clearly lost your mind. We were right to try to get you help. I remained seated, calm. That's your choice. Then, James, Emily hissed, tugging at his sleeve. Sit down. He ignored her, glaring at me. You won't get away with this. We'll have you evaluated by real doctors, not your friend. We'll show you're not competent. James, Emily snapped. Stop it. Frank leaned forward. Mr. Miller, I should caution you that threats against my client could be construed as elder abuse. Especially in light of the false APS report you've already filed. The penalties for that can be quite severe in Tennessee. James paled slightly but maintained his defiant stance. This isn't over. Actually, I said quietly, it is over. You and Emily have shown me exactly who you are and what I mean to you. I've responded accordingly. The only question now is whether you'll accept reality or continue fighting. A battle you can't win. Emily was crying openly now. Daddy, please, we can work this out. There's nothing to work out, I said, my voice softening slightly. I'm staying in my home. My money is mine to allocate as I see fit. If you want a relationship with me, it will be on the basis of mutual respect, not financial exploitation. James grabbed his copy of the letter and his jacket. This is all Pete and Meredith's fault. They pushed for the facility. I just went along with it. I couldn't help but laugh. Still blaming others for your choices, James? Some things never change. He stormed out without another word. Emily lingered, looking torn. Dad, she said quietly, I'm sorry it came to this. I really thought we were helping. Did you? I asked. Or did you see dollar signs when you looked at my house? She flinched. It wasn't like that. It was exactly like that, I corrected her. But there's a way forward here, Emily. Respect my decisions. Treat me like a person, not a checkbook or a burden. That's all I'm asking. She nodded slowly, tears still streaming down her face. I'll try. As she left, Frank turned to me. That went about as well as could be expected. Yes, I agreed. James will keep fighting. Emily might come around. And you? Frank asked. How are you feeling? I considered the question. The confrontation had been painful but necessary. I'd stood my ground, protected myself, and maybe just maybe taught my children something important about consequences. I feel free, I said finally. For the first time in years, I feel like I'm living for myself, not for them. Frank nodded. You know they might still try something else. I'm counting on it, I replied, but I'm ready now. 3 months passed. The initial storm of angry calls and texts from James gradually subsided, replaced by stony silence. Emily, on the other hand, began a cautious reconciliation. First with brief, polite text messages asking how I was doing. Later with occasional visits, always announced in advance, always respectful of my boundaries. During one such visit, as we sat on my back porch drinking iced tea, she finally addressed what had happened. "I've been thinking a lot about everything," she said, staring into her glass. "About why we did what we did." "And," I prompted when she fell silent. "And I'm ashamed," she admitted. "Pete and I have been struggling financially. The market crashed. His investments tanked. And suddenly we were looking at having to pull Madison out of her private school." Madison was my granddaughter, a bright 16-year-old with dreams of medical school. "So when James mentioned the idea of selling your house, how much it might be worth, double quotes, she trailed off. You saw a solution to your problems." I finished for her. She nodded miserably. "We convinced ourselves it was about your safety, but really, we were thinking about ourselves. It's no excuse, but that's what happened." "Thank you for being honest," I said. "That's more than your brother has managed." "James and Meredith separated last month," Emily said suddenly. "Did you know?" I shook my head, surprised. No, I hadn't heard. "Apparently she's been having an affair with her yoga instructor. James is a mess. He's staying in their guest house while they figure things out." I felt a complex mixture of emotions, concern for my son, a touch of vindication that Meredith's true character had been revealed, sadness at the family fracturing further. "He blames you, you know," Emily continued. "Says the stress of the inheritance situation caused problems in their marriage." "James has always blamed others for his problems," I said. "It's easier than looking in the mirror." Emily nodded. "I've been doing a lot of mirror looking lately. It's not comfortable." "Growth rarely is," I replied. We sat in companionable silence for a while, watching butterflies dance among the zinnias Margaret had planted years ago. "Dad," Emily said eventually, "I want you to know that I understand why you did what you did with the will. You had every right to protect yourself." "I appreciate that, Emily. And I want you to know that I don't care about the money anymore. I mean, of course, it would be nice, but that's not why I'm here. I'm here because you're my dad." And I almost lost sight of how important that is. For the first time since this ordeal began, I felt a glimmer of hope that at least one of my children might have learned something valuable from it. The following week brought an unexpected development. James appeared at my door, unannounced, looking haggard and unkempt. "Can I come in?" he asked, his voice lacking its usual confidence. I hesitated, then stepped aside. Briefly, "I have plans later." He entered, glancing around as if seeing my home for the first time. "Place looks good, it always has," I replied. "What do you want, James?" He sank onto my couch, suddenly looking every one of his 50 years. "Meredith's leaving me, taking half of everything. Emily mentioned you were having problems. I'm sorry to hear that." He gave a bitter laugh. "Are you? I thought you'd be celebrating." "I don't celebrate my son's pain," I said simply, "no matter what's happened between us." He looked up, surprised. "Yeah, well, turns out, she's been planning this for a while. Had a separate bank account I knew nothing about." Sound familiar? The irony wasn't lost on me. Life has a way of coming full circle sometimes. "I need money, Dad," he said bluntly. "The lawyers are bleeding me dry. The restaurant's barely breaking even. I can't afford the alimony she's asking for." And there it was. Not an apology, not reconciliation, just another request for money. "No," I said firmly. "You haven't even heard how much." "The amount doesn't matter, James. I'm not giving you money." His face hardened. "After everything I've done for you." "What exactly have you done for me, James?" I interrupted. "In the last decade, what have you contributed to my life besides stress and demands?" He opened his mouth, then closed it again, unable to answer. "That's what I thought," I said. "You're my son, and I will always love you, but I won't finance your life anymore. I won't be your ATM. So that's it," he demanded. "After all these years, you're just cutting me off." "I'm establishing boundaries," I corrected him, something I should have done long ago. "If you want a relationship with me, it needs to be based on mutual respect, not financial dependence." "This is about Mom, isn't it?" he said suddenly. "You think I didn't grieve for her like you did? You think I moved on too quickly?" The non sequitur caught me off guard. "What are you talking about? You've been different since she died. Withdrawn. Judging us all the time." "That's not true, James." "It is," he insisted. Mom would have helped me. She would have understood. I felt a flash of anger. Don't you dare use your mother's memory to manipulate me. Margaret worked too hard for her money to watch you squander it on bad investments and bailing out your wife's shopping addiction. James stood, his face flushed. You know what? Forget it. I don't need your money. I'll figure this out myself. I hope you do, I said sincerely. I really do hope you stand on your own 2 feet for once. He stormed out, slamming the door behind him. I sighed, wondering if that relationship could ever be repaired. The wounds ran deep on both sides. That evening, I called my lawyer. Frank, I said, when he answered, I need to make one more change to my will. 2 weeks later, on a golden autumn afternoon, I hosted a barbecue in my backyard. Emily and her family came, including Madison, who showed me her college application essays. My poker buddies were there, along with neighbors Sarah and Bill, and several friends from my volunteer work at the library. Frank came to, bringing his wife and a folder of documents, which he handed to me privately. All done, he confirmed. The trust for Madison's education is established. Emily can't touch it, and neither can Pete. It will pay her tuition directly to whatever college she attends. Perfect, I said. Thank you. I watched my granddaughter laughing with her friends, her whole life ahead of her. Perhaps she would be wiser than her parents. Perhaps the cycle could be broken. Emily approached, a plate of food in her hand. Everything okay? Dad, you look thoughtful. Everything's fine, I assured her, just reflecting on how life takes unexpected turns. She nodded, following my gaze to Madison. She got her early acceptance letter from Vanderbilt yesterday. Full academic scholarship. Pride swelled in my chest. That's wonderful. She worked so hard for it, Emily said. Didn't want to depend on anyone else to make it happen. I looked at my daughter, wondering if she recognized the lesson in her own words. From her small smile, I thought perhaps she did. Have you heard from James? I asked. Her expression darkened. He's selling the restaurant, moving to Florida to start fresh. Whatever that means. Sometimes a fresh start is what people need, I said diplomatically. Maybe, she conceded, but running away doesn't solve the problems you carry inside you. No, I agreed. It doesn't. The conversation shifted to lighter topics as more guests joined us. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across my yard, I found myself feeling content in a way I hadn't for years. My home was secure. My finances were protected. One child was finding her way back to being the person I'd raised her to be. The other was on his own journey, for better or worse. Most importantly, I had reclaimed my life and my dignity. I had stood up for myself when it mattered most. That night, after everyone had gone home, I sat on my back porch with a glass of whiskey, looking up at the stars. I imagined Margaret beside me, as I often did in quiet moments. You would have handled this differently, I told her imagined presence. You were always better with the kids than I was, more patient, wiser. A gentle breeze rustled the wind chimes. She'd hung years ago, but I think you would have approved of the boundaries, at least, I continued. You always said we should teach them to stand on their own feet. I raised my glass in a silent toast to her memory, to the life we'd built, to the lessons learned too late. Some people never discover the true character of their loved ones until money enters the equation. I had been fortunate, in a painful way, to see my children clearly before it was too late, to protect myself, to teach them that respect wasn't optional, it was essential, and perhaps, in time, to rebuild what had been broken on stronger foundations than before. The next morning, I woke to a text message from Emily. Thank you for yesterday. Madison can't stop talking about your offer to help volunteer at the hospital. I'm grateful you're in our lives, Dad. I won't take that for granted again. It wasn't perfect. The wounds were still healing. Trust was being rebuilt slowly, brick by brick, but it was a start. And at 72, with the hard-earned wisdom of experience, I knew that sometimes a fresh start was the greatest gift of all. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left.